I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this Word in Your Ear podcast, videocast, thing for which there is no name. Mark Ellen and I have been creating in this line since 2007. And if any of it has met with your approval, then please click to subscribe because it helps. Leave a comment because we like to hear from you, and maybe even consider becoming a Patreon supporter because then, well, you'll be one of us. Visit patreon.com/wordinyour-ear for details.
You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
This Word podcast has been slightly delayed because we started doing this. When did we start doing this, Alex?
We started doing it Saturday morning when I was at in the custody of the world famous Frimley Travellodge. And
people come from all over the world to record their albums at the Frimley Travellodge. It's like it's like the the Muscle Shoals of our days,
more like Mr. Muscle Shoals down there.
Yes,
but the Wi-Fi was not up to spec.
It was not great, so we decided to put it off, and we couldn't do it this morning because I've just returned, listeners, from cheerleading on my eldest daughter who's taking part in the London Marathon. And so I did that pretty much all day today. I've been out for sort of 12 hours.
Wow. And how did she do?
Well, she completed it, and it's the first time she's ever done it,
wow.
And that it's just a huge thing, She's never been a runner or anything really. And she just started doing it through as I think many people have started doing these things, through the park runs, the Saturday morning park runs.
The 5K. Yeah. My brother-in-law does a lot of those. And he drags me out for them occasionally. I did a half a few years ago.
A half marathon?
I did, yeah. So it was, I was on the All or Nothing musical tour, and our head of wardrobe, she asked around if any of us wanted to do a half marathon, the Manchester half with her, and she was raising money for an endometriosis charity, and we said yes, of course. So we went up, and we meant to train, but it sort of coincided with the most fun bit of the tour, so everybody sort of forgot to do any training ahead of it. So so we did it, and me and the Small Faces drummer Stefan, we resolved to stay together for the whole thing, and it was amazing just how that made a difference, because we both got a really good time, and the reason was, whenever one of us felt like we were lagging behind, we'd find an extra reserve of energy because we didn't want to let the other one down. So we did it, and then I basically couldn't walk for 3 days afterwards, and I thought, that's my upper minute. And the Manchester half is really flat as well. It's not hilly, so it's as far as half marathons go, it's quite an easy one to do. But my brother-in-law does marathons and Ironmans and stuff like that, and I just feel like it's so far beyond the limit of my physicality. But yeah,
you never know. I'm just laughing at the idea of the idea of Alex in the Iron Man category. Yeah. I think yes, there ought to be a special category there for
Plastic Man.
Iron Man, you can pop in your top pocket. But anyway, so she did it, and I've never actually been a witness the London Marathon before. I've been a witness when the Olympics were in London. I went to watch the women's marathon just so I could say I'd seen the Olympic marathon,
Yeah.
And but obviously that doesn't have whatever this is, 55,000 participants or whatever. It's just a mind-boggling piece of logistics. And of course, all those 55,000 people all have, probably 10 people, friends and family, children, whatever, who troop round London on the various modes of transport, tubes, overground, DLRs, all this kind of thing, to kind of try and spot them
So that's what I wanted to ask you actually. So, how did you position yourself? Because I've never been down there. So,
I took advice from a friend who has run it a number of times, and he said, "Well, go down Greenwich, because Greenwich is the kind of 6 mile point or something, and you can usually see something at Greenwich." And then he said Canary Wharf, because they do they go round Canary Wharf a couple of times, to make up the distance. And so that's pretty good. So that's kind of what we did. And, we went down, my wife and I, and then 2 friends, and we, with helium balloons with Claire's name written on them, in the hope that, and because it's very difficult because the sheer numbers of people, and finding a point of view that enables you to see them coming towards you, so you can pick out, oh, look, she's there, or whatever, Whereas if you're waiting until they're upon you, you've got no hope. But anyway, the thing I wanted to just mention, because it kind of relates to, you started the weekend with a technological foul-up. Well, we ended the weekend with an absolute triumph of technology, because Claire said, "Yeah, you can follow me on the official marathon app." And I said, "Oh, okay, all right." So I downloaded the official marathon app. And
so how does that work?
Well, in my experience, apps, they very often, they promise more than they deliver. Very often, they're very often a way of a sponsor, and I kind of don't blame them. Capturing your emails and all that sort of stuff. But basically, my daughter, you just look up somebody you want to follow in the race. You look up their name, and there they are, and they've got a number. And then you put them on the little page that you want to follow. And I was following her, and I was following Dan Reeves, who you and I used to work with, at the Word, and also another friend. So I had 3 of them.
But how does it follow them?
And it then follows them because they have a chip in their number, right?
Oh, I see.
Now, I understand the technology. Well, I say kind of understand it, but I still didn't expect it to work. Alex, it worked. This is just damn spooky. You're following 3 people, and and you open the map. And it's a little blue circle where one of them is, a little green circle where one of them is, and a red circle where another one is. And they're moving. These circles on your map, on your app, on your phone, are moving in pretty much real time. Now,
and it's
how the hell?
For like 100,000 runners, or however many it is.
It's 55,000, I think it is.
Crikey.
So how the hell? I mean, and it just struck me.
And that was on 4G, wasn't it? So you're telling me the London Marathon app can do that, and yet the Frimley Travellodge...
Absolutely.
What kind of world do we live in?
Yeah, but isn't it amazing? And we have said it on more than one occasion in the context of the podcast, that when lockdown happened, which we'll now talk about like the day war broke out or whatever, the phony war, the sirens went off, we went to the shelters, nothing happened. But we said, well, we could try doing them via Zoom, didn't we?
We did.
And we said, well, let's have a go. And generally speaking, we've done hundreds.
Oh, yeah. I think it's nudging on the thousands now.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah.
We've done 1,000, and broadly speaking, they work, don't they? Yeah. I mean, technologically, they work. I mean, you can argue about bits could be better and all those things. And that that never used to happen with technology. I don't even remember. I certainly remember the days, I don't know, if you go back 10 years, where if somebody had said to you, you don't need a plane ticket to get on a plane. You just turn up at the airport, and you got a thing on your phone which will scan, and that will print out a boarding pass. And you would have said, don't pull my leg. That will not work. That could work, but it will not work.
Well, it's funny because I've before we start recording, I've been checking into my flight for tomorrow via my phone. I've got 2 flights to check into, and two bags for each because it's a tour trip, and I've been able to do it all via my phone. Sort out my seat, check in my extra bags, get my boarding pass, and I remember when I started touring. Actually, it was still just about in the days where you had to print out a piece of paper and take it to the airport.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that now just seems like a completely, superfluous.
Well, you see, the thing that interests me is I always understood these things were possible. Never doubted that for a second. But it never seemed that they were practical. It never seemed that they kind of worked. You know what I mean?
They didn't until, that's the thing. They didn't, did they?
They didn't. And what made them work? Presumably, what makes your Zoom work is it's been stress tested to buggery by people all over the world using it massively, intensively during lockdown, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And it must be the same with 55,000 runners being individually tracked in the London Marathon. It's clearly the same technology is being used all over the world, all the time, and it's getting better all the time.
And they're gaining user data because of it. They're getting feedback on a constant basis. I mean, Zoom, it updates on a really frequent basis, and there's got to be one reason for that. It's because they're getting feedback to be able to make it better, make the user experience better, and it's getting better and better all the time. Have you seen the litany of apps that are available as part of the Zoom package now? It's about
not
50
that I've used them.
I don't know what any of them do. But
I don't know what they do. I'm still waiting for human beings to say to me, "Oh, you got to try that," and then I try it. I'm going to find out for myself. Alex, I've got a stack waddy game for you.
Oh, please, go ahead.
I don't know if this might work. I happened, I noted the cover stars of the American Rolling Stone. And they pretty much have one thing in common, which is I've never heard of any of them.
Okay.
And the people who've strangely enough ended up in Donald Trump's cabinet all have 2 things in common. They've all got kind of images like pop stars, and I've never heard of any of them. Okay. So what you have to do is to tell me of these names, which ones are on the cover of Rolling Stone and which ones are members of Donald Trump's cabinet of crazy people. Okay.
Ooh, that's good. Okay.
Are you ready? Okay, Here we go. The first one, Benson Boone.
He's a pop star. I know about him.
Okay. A pop.
He brought on Brian May at Coachella, didn't he? Or he did something Queen-esque, something linked in with. I think Brian May got on stage with him at Coachella.
Okay. Well, according to Rolling Stone, it says a pop phenomenon learns to fly. That's the little strap line, Okay. Number 2, Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, spelled Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard. Can't you get a cream for that?
Yes. Tulsi Gabbard. What do you think? Country star or a member of Trump's cabinet of craziness?
I'm going to say that's a member of Trump's crazy cabinet.
It is. It's Director of National Intelligence.
Oh, good.
Okay. Megan Maroney. What do you think? What do you think? Right-wing Republican firebrand of Fox News or country star or whatever?
I feel it's too alliterative to not be a pop star.
Okay. It's a Gen Z country queen opens up.
There you go.
Okay. Addison Rae, not Addison Lee, the cab company, Addison Rae. Addison Rae, spelled R-A-E.
She's a pop star.
She's the queen of TikTok, is coming for pop. Okay. Yep. And finally, Kirsty Noem, K-A-R-S-T-I-N-O-E-M.
Crikey. She's in Trump's crazy club, surely.
She's the Homeland Security Secretary. Oh, so you got 5 out of 5 or however many it was there.
Do I get a prize?
You get a cuddly toy you can take home, Alex. Okay. We'll be back in a minute.
This is Word in Your Ear, down the rock and roll rabbit hole since 2007.
So, 45 years ago this week, The Cure released their second album. Is it called 17 Seconds? I think it is, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm rubbish at Cure albums, actually. I'm very much in the Cure singles camp, and I've never really become an expert at their long player output.
Well, anyway, I think it's called 17 Seconds, and and at the time, I interviewed Robert Smith a few times around about this time because I kind of knew his manager. Here's a funny thing. Here's two funny things.
Okay.
I interviewed Robert Smith at the time of 17 Seconds for quite a long piece. Can't remember what it was in, but anyway. And the interview took place in a little Swiss restaurant on Wardour Street, just near the corner of Broadwick Street, called the St. Moritz, with a Swiss flag outside. Interesting side note, what's the unique characteristic of the Swiss flag? Do you know, Alex Gold?
Ooh, okay. Crikey. Is it something to do with the cross being very small?
I'll tell you, it's square. It's square. Most flags are not square.
It's square.
It's square. The Swiss flag is square.
Is that allowed?
Listen, Switzerland has got by all these years by making its own rules on all kinds of things. So the kind of the kind of aspect ratio of the flag must be one of the least controversial. Anyway, I interviewed Robert Smith in this little restaurant in Ward Street. And when I was noting that it was 45 years since this record, I thought, that's remarkable, because 45 years later, The Cure are still with us. Uninterrupted, they're with us, as is the St. Moritz restaurant in Soho.
Yeah.
Now, you and I, spent a lot of time in Soho. You know that, you navigate your way around Soho by the locations of restaurants and offices that are no longer where they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You always walk past, that's where we used to go to Soho. Of course, it's not there anymore. It can't be. It's been sold, knocked down, turned into apartments for oligarchs, God knows what. Restaurants have all changed a million times over. The St. Moritz is still there. And The Cure are still there. I mean, isn't that not remarkable? They are unique, aren't they?
I think so, yeah. I mean, do you know what? I can't remember the last time I went to St. Moritz, but, everything's gone. As well, the whole north side of Denmark Street has been decimated. And,
yes.
The fact that it's there and, still obviously, its customer base is healthy enough for it to, to legitimise remaining open. It's there in the 100 Club, isn't it, really?
Yeah, well, yes, that's true. That's true. But I mean, The Cure, there's who are the contemporaries of The Cure? I don't know, the Smiths, I suppose, are a bit later, aren't they, really?
Yeah.
New Order.
The Cure as well. I feel like The Cure are one of those groups that have got bigger the longer they've left it.
Yeah.
Because they're a massive deal now. I mean, they're huge, aren't they? But they're still thought of as an indie band.
Absolutely. It kind of works for them. It's just extraordinary, I know we often nominate Robert Fripp as the man who won rock and roll. Well, you could probably add Robert Smith.
He does exactly what he likes.
He does what he wants, and he appears to have done very, very well out of it.
Yeah, I don't think their fan base is getting any smaller.
No.
Apparently, he is a little nugget. He watches. So when they play a show, he's very much a nocturnal creature. It's probably not going to be a surprise to you, but he watches the show after he finishes and writes down notes to present to the band. Has them all in his hotel room.
So it's like a theatrical director. That's fantastic. So they have notes. That's
Apparently,
great.
yeah.
So yes. So let's just talk about the bass on the full song, shall we? And now, I think you can do better. Don't let yourself down.
And it's not just band members. Apparently, I don't know how true this is, but apparently it's lighting as well and things like that. It's the whole kind of.
Well, why the hell not? I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all.
No, I think it's great. It's
anybody who's bothered about the experience that the paying customer has should be applauded.
But it sort of makes sense because doesn't he manage himself as well?
I don't know. He maybe does nowadays.
I think he looks after the whole operation, so maybe he feels an extra obligation.
So people who manage themselves, you see, there aren't that many of them. Dave Clark managed himself back in the 60s. He had an agent, but he did the management himself and did very well out of it and made sure that the money that the Dave Clark Five made, he kept all of it. None of it went to anybody else. Now, another funny thing about this Robert Smith business is that, I don't know, 25 years after that interview, Keith Drummond, who you and I both worked with, Keith Drummond, art director, so forth, he went to some Cure party and he was talking to Robert Smith, and Robert Smith said, "Oh, what are you doing?" He said, "Oh, I'm working with David Hepworth." And Robert Smith said to him, "David Hepworth knows something about me that nobody else does."
Ooh, okay.
And Keith came and told me this. And I thought, nobody's ever said that to me in my life before. And that's a really curious thing to be told, because it really makes you stop and think. And then it makes you think, what could it possibly be? And, I haven't gone back and looked at the interviews or anything. I just kind of puzzled. And then quite a number of years later, I read that Robert Smith is in the habit of telling one lie in every interview he does.
Really?
Yeah. So in that sense, anybody who's ever interviewed him knows something about him that nobody else does, because it's not true. And I'm not offended about this. I'm quite charmed about this. Whether I reproduced this fantasy in the piece or it just amused me or it didn't make it past the transcript, I do not know. But it got me thinking about interviews, being on the receiving end of interviews.
Yeah.
How quickly you must. I mean, being interviewed at first is a thrill because it's just an ego trip, basically. It's somebody being interested in what you've got to say.
I get to talk about me? Amazing.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't love that, And, but it very quickly can turn into the most onerous duty you can possibly imagine.
Because you're generally being asked the same questions again and again and again and again and again, aren't you? And,
absolutely. So the temptation to just make stuff up, I would say, is pretty damn irresistible. I would find it, I just make stuff up just to have something different to say. Wouldn't you?
I'm quite surprised more pop stars don't do it, actually.
Well, they probably do, but they're probably not candid enough to say, I drop one lie, one red herring in here, if you're, I don't know, Morrissey or something like that, who just adores being interviewed, he just riffs, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Half the time, it's not stuff he's thought about, but he just kind of, what other situation in life are you going to have where you're going to sit there and somebody's going to look at you and they've got a little tape recorder in front of them or whatever, and they just kind of nod and smile and everything you say, and just occasionally throw in a slightly flattering kind of, "Oh, that must have been fun. Oh, do tell me more."
I suppose it's the only situation in human life where communication with another human in the same room as them is not an exchange, isn't it? Because it's not an
exchange at all. That's a really interesting point. they're not interested in an exchange. they're with a very few exceptions. They're not interested in an exchange. They're interested. They kind of like the sound of their own voice, and hey, I said that in the middle of a podcast. That's hilarious.
Where's the irony button?
Yes, but it's a kind of form of no pressure counselling, isn't it? I mean, it's just.
But I would say a podcast is a slightly different concern, because on a podcast you're generally talking about other things, whereas if it's an interview, you're there.
Talk about yourself. Let's enough of that. Let's talk about me, my favourite subject. It's like somebody said years ago. An actor is a person who, if you ain't talking about him, he ain't listening. And I'm sure that's the case. I mean, Morrissey is a classic case of this. That we talked. I think we talked about this in recent podcasts. That we all went to school with somebody, at least one person, who was kind of, how can I put it? I believe the contemporary parlance would be up themselves. You know what I mean? That they were kind of, they thought they were the great I am. They kind of invented a persona, and everybody knew what that persona was. Well, imagine what it's like if the one you went to school with turns out to be really famous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Turns out to be Morrissey or Kevin Rowland or whatever. It must be quite hard to live with if you just remember him as somebody who just talked too much in the dinner queue or whatever. At school, and now they are having their views on everything sought by the Observer or Rolling Stone at enormous length. And Joe Wiley going, "No, tell us more. And you're thinking, he's a tosser. I knew him when he was a little oik 14. He hasn't changed at all,
But it's kind of gone full circle for Morrissey, hasn't he? Because nobody really wants his views anymore.
Is that the case? Yeah, maybe that. Oh, I don't know. There's probably some people.
Disgraced himself so much.
Yeah, maybe he'll be back. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, that's Robert Smith and the temptation to make up things during interviews. Talking of things made up during interviews, this last week saw the death of reggae star Max Romeo. And of course, now there are two kind of Max Romeo purple patches, I suppose, that we know. That there's the, I don't know, mid-70s War in a Babylon, and I'm going to put on an iron shirt and chase the devil out of Ut, and all this kind of stuff, produced by Lee Perry, which the Clash were always enormous, great fans of. War in a Babylon, all that stuff. But what is it? And that was his irie, righteous Max Romeo. But a few years before that, in I think 1968, he had a record in the top 10 in Britain. Spent 25 weeks on the British singles chart.
Right.
Peaked at number 10, and it was called Wet Dream.
Okay.
Now, it's 1968, Alex. And now you may be able to, talk about wet dreams, openly in the queue in Sainsbury's nowadays. The world may have changed. But let me tell you, back in 1968, no. Anyway, 1968, 69 is a kind of purple period of kind of rude records that got really high in the charts, but were never played on the radio, really. Because the other one was Je T'aime,
Serge Gainsbourg.
Serge Gainsbourg and Jane Birkin. Yeah. And also around, a bit slightly later, the many hits of Judge Dredd. Do you remember Judge Dredd?
I don't know Judge
Dredd was a white kind of reggae DJ toaster who used to, his records were all called Big 7, Big 6, Big 3, whatever. And they're all all, referring to the size of his member.
Wow.
And again, didn't get played on the radio, but would go up the charts. And so when the time came for them to do the chart rundown, when Alan Fluff Freeman on a Sunday evening would do the uppers and downs and hanging around us, and at number 20, and he'd go, the New Seekers, I'll Never Find Another You, and, David Bowie's Space Oddity, and at number 15, a record by Max Romeo, because he couldn't say the title. Anyway, I remember round about this time, and I can't remember which radio station it was on, but I definitely heard it. Max Romeo, who was over from Jamaica doing a promotional tour to promote the fact there's an album where you could get Wet Dream on it. Wet Dream and other nocturnal emissions, as Tom Waits would no doubt say. He attempted to explain that Wet Dream was not, as you might have thought, in any way rude. It was simply to do with trying to fix a leaky roof. And because the roof leaked, he woke up and dreaming and was
That's
moist.
Exactly what I was thinking it was about.
And absolutely. And so, understandably, seeking aid to patch this aperture in his roof, he asked his girlfriend to ascend the ladder,
Okay.
and put some, thing over the aperture, which he would then fix with a stick. And that is why, Alex, the refrain of Wet Dream was, "Lie down, gal, let me push it up, push it up." This is how he explained it. So, Max Romeo, we shall not see his like again.
You're tuned to Word in Your Ear, the longest continuous conversation in rock and roll.
Okay, it just remains to remind people that if you're thinking, I really should do something to help keep this valuable work of national cultural importance out there, keep the freak flag flying, do my little bit to ensure that the tiny interviews that Max Romeo did 50 years ago don't go forgotten. Nothing is forgotten. No sin is forgotten in the world of Word in Your Ear. And if you want to do your bit, this is how you can do it. You go to patreon.com/Word in Your Ear and find out how you can get involved. And you never know, if you sign up at the correct grade, you might be joining us on the occasion of your birthday, where Mark Allen and I will shin down a digital drain pipe and take the mickey out of your records, frankly. Or you could join us on the occasion of your birthday later on and throw a log on the Word in Your Ear fire. We heard from a listener this week, actually. Andy Partridge was listening to our discussion about the Simon Dupree and the Big Time, Gentle Giant, Ray Shulman, and about that period in '67 where the whole world went psychedelic all over, and Andy was telling us that he listens in the bath, and he was very much enjoyed that piece, and he wanted us to mention some other groups. Was it the Moles? I think it was. The Moles. Anyway, the point is, I was thinking about Andy Partridge listening in the bath, and I was wondering who else among the Word in Your Ear massive listens while floating a rubber duck
I'd say
reaching for the back brush.
I can understand Word in Your Ear being a good bath listen because on average, I'd say the average podcast we do is around 40, 45 minutes. Which is absolute top tier bath time. Any more than that, it's prunes o'clock. Any less, it's not really a bath. It's a dip, isn't it?
It's a dip, and a dip is an entirely different thing. Yeah. So we want to know basically how you listen to it. If you're in the habit of listening to the Word in Your Ear podcast, do you listen to the bath? Do you listen while walking a dog? Do you listen while, I don't know, art texting a ceiling or whatever? I don't know. Do people still do that kind of thing?
What's art texting?
I don't know. It's just
it sounds great. I feel like I need to learn it now because
it's an arcane DIY process. I think that just came from the back of my filing cabinet. Walking the dog, mowing the lawn, anything, running the London Marathon. I don't know, whatever. We'd be just interested to know.
We would.
The more unusual, the better. And so just get in touch. How would people get in touch, Alex, if they want to do that?
People get in touch they could drop us an email at wiye.london@gmail.com. Or you could drop us, you could slide into our DMs on Instagram.
You could.
Word in Your Ear London. Or...
Pigeon.
A pigeon's great.
A pigeon's great.
I got a bit distracted because we have actually got a small clutch of new patrons to announce, you see.
Oh, have you? Go on.
Shall I read out names?
Yeah, go on. Yeah, do that.
Okie doke. So we have, to welcome aboard, Daniel Thornton.
Welcome, Daniel. Welcome.
Katie Meyer.
Hello, Katie. Pull up a chair.
Phil Edwards.
And you, Phil. Next to Katie, if you like. Okay.
Phil is an annual subscribe annually, and if you do subscribe annually, you get a 15% discount. So definitely not to be sniffed.
There's obviously a man who knows the value of money. Yeah,
and our final new patron is who subscribes to the Clubhouse tier, which does indeed benefit you the greatest birthday present a person could possibly wish for. In Mark and Dave digitally coming around to your house and rummaging through your record collection.
And we're doing that this week, aren't we?
We are indeed, and it's this week. James Bennett. Welcome, James.
Well, James, welcome, and we'll no doubt be in touch with you later this week. So if you'd like to follow in the footsteps of these people, as I say, patreon.com/wordinyour ear. Bye-bye.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.